and welcome to this episode of Tavern Talks. Today, you and I are going to chat about different options that you can use at low levels of play to give your players interesting and meaningful items that don't unbalance your encounters at the same time. Now, I know that it's easy to default to that +1 longsword because it seems pretty simple, especially for new game masters. But then you realize that your encounters have half as many hit points once someone has a magic sword. What do I mean by that? Well, if you take a look through all of the monsters in the monster manual, is it something like 45%, I believe, of the monster manual has resistance to non-magical weapons. So those creatures are only going to take half damage from regular weapons. If you give your party a bunch of magic weapons, all of those encounters now have half as many hit points. So instead, if you really want to give your party a weapon, something I like to borrow from, I believe it was 3.5, is masterwork weapons. So you can have a +1 masterwork weapon. It's +1 to hit, +1 to damage, but it's not magical. So it doesn't get around those resistances, but it gives that player that power boost. And it's really fun later on in a campaign when you say they have a magic sword that isn't a +1 anything, and you drop in a +2 masterwork sword. Do they give up the resistance for that +2? Or do they keep it because it's magical and maybe does something cool? Now your player has a choice. Another thing that I like to do with magic weapons when you start giving them out is to avoid the pluses. Instead, give them something neat. I once gave a player a invisible longsword. It was a sword that was invisible, which granted him advantage the first attack he made in combat. Because nobody saw you had a sword in your hand and then suddenly you're stabbing them. And it was some of the most amazing roleplay I have ever seen in a weapon, especially when somebody dropped it on the floor. That was a fun couple minutes of them looking for it. Another thing you can do is put into a weapon that has charges on a spell. Something you want to give your party, but you don't want them to have too much of it. You give something a limited number of charges and zero way to recharge. So once it runs out, it runs out. Now you're creating drama when they go to use it. On the flip side of that, something that I occasionally like to throw at a party is a perfect example of this. I have a level 5 party that just one of the players, because of something that they went through, got 2 ceramic rings. And was told that it would unleash the power of their birthright. They're playing a Dragonborn. I'm not sure if they put 2 and 2 together. You crush one of those rings, and it will transform them into a juvenile dragon of the kind of Dragonborn that they are, in this case, red. But it only lasts for a minute. And once they crush the first one, they've used that, and it will be dead and done. They have one more, and I'm not planning on giving any more of these for the rest of the campaign. They have one more, and they have plans to besiege a city. So they have to decide when to use it. I think you're noticing a theme in a lot of the items that I like to give out, where you want to create some drama with the weapon, if it's a weapon. Now, once you get into higher levels of play, you can kind of monkey with the rules, but early on, expendable stuff, is fantastic. We're not going to get into the economy of how a healing potion is 50 gold because that would take somebody working a regular job like 3 months to save up for one. So, little Timmy falls down and gets injured. Too bad, little Timmy. You're screwed. Sorry, that was my rant. The D&D economy is a shambles. I'm not saying I have a solution. Anyways, once you've moving on from weapons, you can grant them different armors. There's the armors of resistance, which are always a neat one to give to them. That doesn't You don't have to give them a +1 armor. Just give them resistance to something or armor that there's one set of the oh shoot, what's the name of it? There's a suit of armor that that lets you ignore cold damage, and when you are wearing it, I think you can handle up to like -30 degrees Celsius and be totally fine. So you can also take items like that and pull the you can handle extreme cold temperatures in this armor and just kind of put it on an item and let them kind of run around with it with that lower level version of it. So you don't have to give them the resistance, but you can grab and choose different abilities and craft it into an item and just kind of give it to them. Adding knockback effects is also another great way to change up weapons. Like there are certain feats, like the Crusher feat, that has I believe it's whenever you land a critical hit on a creature with a bludgeoning weapon, they are knocked back 5 feet. Well, there's nothing stopping you from grabbing that, or I recommend the Slasher feat and the Piercer feat as well, and grabbing that ability and just sticking it onto any old weapon that matches the damage type. As your game progresses and you're getting a little more comfortable with giving them magical items, I absolutely love to drop something into every one of my games that the players will find that has a ritual. And these rituals have a bunch of different outcomes. In one case, I think I've talked about the Infernal Beacon before. Once the ritual was performed by drawing the 20-foot large circle, uh, and they had to, I believe, pour blood on it to activate it. You rolled a D100, and there were a multitude of different things. Some of them good, some of them bad, and some of them very situational. One of the effects was that a solar would appear and smite the most evil thing it could see. And if that happened to be you, you were toast. But it could also summon 100 imps who were not friendly, but they also weren't trying to kill you specifically, unlike the 5 Balguras who would show up and try and kill whoever cast the spell. These are all pretty extreme effects, and the players knew when they used it that there was the very real possibility that this could make the situation 100 times worse. But sometimes they looked at their other options and realized that they were all bad, so they made the best choice that they could. And in one case, I had a player convince an enemy to cast the ritual by convincing them that it was a different kind of spell. There was a lot of work that went into that. I won't get into that story. And that enemy cast it inside of their own fortress, which then caused all sorts of havoc to happen within it. And that was some amazing roleplay that that player did to get to that point. The other ritual that I've deployed is called the Book of Faces. And when you open it and use it, it will flip to one of the pages in the book which is again rolling a d100, and whatever you get is the page that it lands on. And it will open to that page, and it is literally the face of that creature that has been tacked onto the page. And the face will leap out of the book and summon that creature. And that creature will fight for you. And if that creature doesn't fight a worthy challenge, which I believe I set at half of its CR, then it would get angry and turn on you. And if you didn't defeat it, then you would be put in the book. So you have to be careful because while most of the things in the book are pretty small, there were a handful of rather large CR creatures, and if you land on that, you better have a darn good reason for it. So I really find it makes it better in that respect for players to have to choose or to have the ability to have tremendous power, but also know that if they misuse it, it could just as easily kill them. It's a lot of fun. Anyways, I've babbled about items long enough. Thanks for sticking it out with us. Some exciting stuff going on behind the scenes. I will be crafting several different battleboard tiles, and for those that are subscribed to our Patreon, you're going to get to see the construction of several different boards in different terrain styles, and I will go through what I know and how I can hopefully help you, as well as a couple getting into crafting episodes that will be uploaded over the next several weeks to months to our Patreon. Again, thanks for sitting it out with us, and always respond with lightning.